Hi everyone, welcome back to Edureka, instructor-led online training portal. So in our last class, we were talking about testng, a tool which helps us to get integrated with Selenium and also generate reports along with the different types of annotations that we have, right? So in our today's class, we are going to discuss about a design pattern in Java which helps us create our framework and also test our application in the easier way. Okay, so this is known as page object model. So you can also call it as object repositories. Right. So what is this POM? So we refer to it as POM. What is this POM? Why do we go with POM? And when we actually need this POM is what we are going to understand in our today's session. Okay. So to get started with, so this POM, as I told you, is a Java design pattern. So why this Java design pattern has been brought into Selenium, I mean to say automation is what we are discussing about, right? When you build your framework, what actually happens is, so your framework will have n number of test cases. For example, say any simple application for that matter will at least have 1,000 test cases, right? So for the 1,000 test cases, think there is one of the web element or few web elements which have been used in 10 different test cases. So let's take an example of your login itself. So if you have to do some operation on your home page or your object creation, I mean user creation or your task creation page, then the first thing that we'll have to do is what? We'll have to log into that application, right? So which means this login is always a repetitive task on everything, right? So this username, password and login button, what we identify, is being used everywhere. For now, what actually happens is, think that now the email is changed into username, right? So that field has been changed into username. If this particular web element is referenced in multiple locations, if you don't use this modeling, the page object modeling, so we might have to change the web element on all the places where we have utilized it, right? So that becomes a tedious task, and the debugging of this particular web element throughout the project would be hectic for an engineer. Right. So in order to overcome this, what we have done is we are going to design a pattern wherein this POM says each and every web application, each and every web page in a web application should be modeled into a class. Alright. So in this class, what actually happens is all the web elements present in that web page will be identified and it will be kept in that class. So this is called as object repository. And if in case later on, if one web element has been changed from one value to another, then all you have to do is just go to that class and change the web element so that all the other test cases or all the other classes which are depending on this class will get changed automatically. So only the reference would be given to the other classes, but the element will be kept in only one class, right? So this is how the page object modeling works. So let's see that usage. So before we talk about this, so this is going to be our agenda for today's class. We are going to learn about page object modeling. We'll understand, what is PageFactory, what are page classes, and how to perform this page object modeling. Okay. So before we learn about our page object modeling, so this is what we are going to understand. Why do we need it? So as I told you, when we have multiple test cases, right, and one web element is used in all the 10 test cases, so if that depends on it, then changing that element would result in updating all the test cases. So this is going to be a very tedious task. So that is the reason we have to make change in only one place and the rest of it will get affected. So this is achieved, or this is possible by your page object model concept. All right. The second usage of it is, so what we actually do is, for example, we have identified all the elements in your web page and we are working on it. So in the normal time, what actually happens, if you have identified an element and you just refresh the page before performing some operation on that element. So what actually happens is the web application gets reloaded and the address of that element will become old. So the address will be a new address when you're trying to identify it. So in this case, what actually happens is you get something called as stale element reference exception. Stale element reference is nothing but old element address. Stale is old, element is your web element, reference is your address. So which is old reference address exception or your stale element reference exception. So using your POM, what we are actually achieving is we are going to identify an element on a web page only when we are using it. So until and unless we use it, we are not going to identify it. So in that case, what actually happens is even though the page gets reloaded, so it doesn't have any problem. So that is how your POM is used in order to overcome this problem as well. So this is very important. This is an interview question as well. People ask you, what do you mean by stale element reference exception, and when do you get it, and how do you overcome this? So stale element reference exception is an exception when you try to identify an element on a web page, and before performing operation, if the page reloads, then the address of that element will become old, and that is known as your stale element reference exception. So it can be overcome by the encapsulation concept in your Selenium, which is your page object modeling. So this is the answer that you're going to give. All right, so let's see how we can work with your POM. All right, so before going through the slides or understanding the slides, let's have a hands-on with your POM. Okay, so let's start working with it. So what I'll be doing is I'm going to create a package here. Okay, let me create a package, new package. So I would be naming it as POM. Okay, so here what I'll do is I'm going to create a new class. So I will say login to app. Correct? So this is what I'm going to do. So now let us do some developer task. Right, what is the developer task? The developer task is to copy paste, right? So what are my steps? My steps is to launch the browser and to navigate to the URL and find out what are the web page that is present in a web application and start working with it, right? So let me take this, ActiTime application that we use, right? So let me use this online.actitime.com. So this is the one that I'm going to use. So before that, let me do this WebDriver. Driver is equal to null, and I would be making it as public static, and let me import this WebDriver, right? So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to say driver.get, and I'll add this URL, right? So let me add this URL here, and now we are going to perform some developer task, right? So this is what we are going to do. Developers work at times. Yeah. Okay, is it set? Yes, it is set. So what we have done, we have launched the browser and we have navigated to the URL. So let me go to this now. Let me navigate to this URL manually. Oh, I'm sorry. I am supposed to copy this and I would be pasting it here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to identify each and every element and I would be working with it. Now what I'll do, I'll just say web element username is equal to what it is, driver dot, okay, for first time, yeah, I'll do it here itself, driver dot find element by dot id. Okay, and I'm going to pass the ID. Then I'll import this web element. Let me identify the ID of that particular web element. So just do a F12, which would open your code to inspect, and let me start working with this. What is the ID? ID is username. Correct? So I'll paste it here. Now after this, what is the operation that I'm going to perform? I'm going to say username dot send keys, and here I would be passing this key, right? So I mean to say username. So one operation is done. Correct? Now I'm going to use this web element password is equal to driver dot find element by dot what? By dot name. Okay, and the name that I'll use it, PWD. So this is the name of it. So now what I'll do, I'll just say password dot send keys, right? So I'll pass these keys apple 1 2 3 4 5, and once after this is done, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to click on this button, which is your login, right? So let me pick this up and let me write my own XPath. So what is it? It is div text is equal to login, correct? So it is identified and I'm gonna pick what I say. Web element login button is equal to driver dot find element by dot XPath, and I'm going to pass this XPath, right? So the operation that I would be performing on this login button is click, login button dot click, correct? So I would be clicking on this. So this is going to be my scenario. So if you want, you can again modify this. How do we modify? We are going to, pick this up, okay, and keep it here. So if you want to keep it here, you can keep it here, not here though. Here it is. So web element username is equal to null, right? And this username, you're going to identify it here, correct? Then what you're going to do, you're going to cut this and paste it here, again make it null. So just the encapsulation concept that we are using. So what we are going to do here, we are going to find this username and password. So again, this is what we are going to do, right? So web element button is equal to null, okay? So I say login button, I copy paste and I keep it here. So this is what we have done. So according to encapsulation, what we are supposed to do, we are supposed to make this element as private, correct? So I'm going to make this element as private. So you can either keep it here or you can also keep it here wherever you want. So let me modify it on a complete encapsulation concept. Why? Okay. So here I'm going to make this all these three as a instance variables. Okay. And I will mark it as private. Okay, private, and this is also going to be private, correct? So once this is done, what we are going to do, instead of writing all these elsewhere, I'm going to write a method, or I'm going to create a method, say public static, what it is, I will name it as send username, right? So this is what I'm going to do, or set username, set uni. So this is what I'm going to do. Now what I'm going to do, public static, it is void, right? Void set name. So these two lines I'm going to cut and I'm going to paste it here. All right. So here change username to static. Okay. Or no, I don't want it to be static. Anyways, if you want to make it static, you can make it static, else you can leave it like that. Okay. So the next method that I'm going to keep it, public void set password. Okay, this is the method, and again these two lines I'm just going to cut and I'm going to paste it here. And then what we are going to do, we are going to create another method, click log, correct? Again these two elements are identified, and what we are going to do, we are going to keep it here, correct? So this is what we are going to perform, and now I'm going to write one method which will log into the application, right? So let me write that. Okay, so not here. Instead, I'm going to write it here. Okay, what do I say? I just say public static void login, or public void login. Okay, there are some more changes that I will be doing. So you will understand how to write, encapsulation code, encapsulated code in your projects. So what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to use this username, correct? Here, I will use this username. I'll call it. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this set password method. Okay. And I would be using it here. Correct. This is done. And then I will use this click login button. Okay. And I will use this. I would be using it here. Right. So now if you want, you can use this in this method, or all these methods can be used directly here also. So let me use that here only, but I'll tell you why I'm using this here. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is, okay, instead of this, let me use all these method there itself. Okay. In your void main method. But here one important thing that I'll have to do is what? I have to create the object of what class? Of your login to app class. So let me make this, So let me create this object. So I say login to app, L is equal to new login to app, right? So I'm going to use this object in order to call this methods l.setUsername, l.setPassword, l.clickLogin. Correct? So this is your encapsulation concept, wherein we will identify the elements like your username or password or whatever and make them as private, and the public methods will be like your getters and setters will be used in order to access them. So that is the concept of your encapsulation. So let me run this program and see whether it works fine or not. Then I'll tell you what will be changed and why we'll have to change this. Okay, so let me run this. So now it is launching the browser. It is going to navigate to the URL. So here it is. It is navigating through your URL. Okay, now it is going to enter the username, password, click on login button. It worked completely fine. Am I right? So it says your active time login license is over. You should purchase. Okay, no problem. So it has expired. Not a problem. Okay. So but it's logging in. That's what we want. All right. So now this is done. I'll just take another one. You don't have to worry about it. Now, what actually is the problem with my code? The first problem is these values are hard coded, which means the method has the keys by itself. So if I have to change the login or if I have to test some other scenario, then it is not possible for me, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make a small change wherein I'm going to use this username or pass this username and password at the time of invocation of this method, right? String PW. So now when I use this method, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass this. Okay, Selenium 7880, and here the password would be passed Apple 12345. Right now my first scenario is done. So this is the first scenario or first test case for your login of your application, right? Login module. My second scenario is I have to log into the application. But what I am supposed to do, so once I go to this application, I'm going to type in the username wrong, and then I'm going to type in the correct password or the wrong password, whatever for that matter. Then I click on this login button. I will wait until I get an error message which says username or password incorrect, right? So this is invalid. Please try again. And now my scenario is I am going to pass on the correct username and the correct password, right? And I will click on this login button. So now it is going to take me to the home page, right? So this is how my second test case would look like, and that is what we are going to identify or automate now. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to call this method twice, l.setUsername. So what is the username that I can pass? I can pass it anything, right? And what is the password? l.setPassword. The password can be whatever, right? I'll just say Apple. Okay, and now what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on this login button, right? I'm sorry, l.click login, right? So this is done. So after this is done, what I'm going to do, I can pick up the error message. So I say string error message is equal to, so what I'm supposed to do, I'm supposed to find this element. So let me find this element. Let me log out. Okay, so I'll log out now and I will just type in something, click on login. So now the code changes. So your user credentials is invalid, error message would be displayed. So this is here. So what I can do is I can fetch this error message, right? So it is span class is equal to error message. So let me write a XPath for this. Span @ class is equal to what it is, error message, right? So I'll copy this, I'll paste it here. Right, it is identified twice. It is not unique. It is identified twice. So what I'll do is I'm going to take this span class is equal to error message. I will take this contains function. Okay, contains what it is, text, right? Text, comma. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to use this username or password is invalid. So I'm going to use this. Right, so let me check if it's right or not. Yeah, this is fine. So I'll close this. Contains span contains text comma invalid. Okay, let me copy some of the contents here. Please try again. Okay, so this is the problem. The spelling is not correct. Contains, yeah, it is identified uniquely. So I'm going to fetch the text of it. Okay, how do I fetch? Driver dot find element by dot xpath, and I'm going to pass this xpath, and I say dot get text. Right, so I've got the text. Now my work is I'll have to print the text. So let me print this error message. Right, so I'm going to print this error message, and I would say please try again is anyways already there, so I don't have to do anything. So now what we are going to do, after that error message is displayed, I am going to log in with the exact username, correct username and password. So let me try that. Okay, so I'll try it here. So now I'm running the program. It is going to launch the browser, navigate through the URL, enter the username, password, clicked on login button. Okay, so now there is an exception which has come up. What it is? No such element exception, unable to locate element xpath. Okay, so this is the problem. So let me wait until the page loads. Okay, so let me wait until the page loads. What I'll be doing is here, after this I will take this implicit wait. So driver dot manage dot timeouts dot implicitly wait for 10 seconds. Okay, so this is what I'll be providing, 10 unit time unit dot seconds. So it will wait until that is present. Let me run it now. Okay, it has to capture it. It is now launching your browser. It is going to navigate through the URL. Right, enter the username. Now it is going to wait, and it has captured your element. Correct, username or password is invalid, has been captured, and it is successfully logged in. Correct, so this is how we are going to work with your encapsulation concept in Selenium. I'm sorry, it is in Java. Right, so this is your encapsulation concept in your Java. But how do we convert the same thing in your Selenium? So this, in order to achieve this, there we have something called as page object modeling. So wherein we are going to apply the same thing in your Selenium as well, but there is a little changes. So if you see, there's a lot of things, but how do we hardcode? We are not going to hardcode this element in the method, but instead there is a little change that would be done. So how do we do it? A modification. So I'm going to create another class. So I'll say new class login page. Okay, so here, okay, let me use your testng annotation itself. So what we are going to do is we are going to make this element private. So just the replica of it. I say private, what it is? Web element username. Right, how do we identify this username? We are going to identify this username by your ID. Correct, so in your POM there is a special annotations that is available, which will help you to identify this element at the runtime, which means whenever you want the element, okay, only then it is going to work. Okay, so let me show you that how that would be working. So I'll just say @find by. Okay, so here I would be using ID is equal to some value. So what is the value? The value is your username. Right, so let me keep it here. Okay, so this is how you identify your element. Now the next one that you'll have to identify is what? Find by. Again, name is equal to pwd. Correct, what is the element? The element is private web element password. Correct, private web element password. And the next one is @find by. What it is? It is your xpath. Xpath is equal to, I'm going to give some xpath. What is the element that I am finding? The element that I am finding is your login button, which is this. Right, I say login button. Okay, now this encapsulation concept for setting your password username remains the same. What we are going to do is there is a slight change that we have to do in this particular code. So we are not going to identify this element by any of the fields. Okay, we don't have to write this driver.find element by whatever. Okay, we are not doing it. The only operation that we can perform on that is whatever it accepts, right? For example, say if it is a text field, we are going to send keys. If it is a button, we are going to click on this. So the identification would be done by your find by annotation itself. Okay, so what is the use of it? So before we run this code, if there is no encapsulation concept, what it is going to do? So let me show you how it works if there is no encapsulation concept. Okay, so let me create a class. I say login to acti time. Okay, I'll use your public static void main method. So if you want, you can just use your test also at the rate test annotation also. So whatever you want, you can do it. Okay, let me use this itself. So what I'll do, the same scenario, the second scenario of your application which we used is setting up the system property, logging into the application, finding an element, correct? So let me use that, the same thing. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this method like your username is equal to find it. Okay, these two methods I'm going to pick it up. Okay, so here I'll paste it. Okay, so don't worry about the error message, I'll fix it. So I'm going to pick this up. Okay, then what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to pick this up. So let me make the necessary changes. So what is the first thing? It is your public static WebDriver driver is equal to null, right? So this is done. Now you're going to take this web element username is equal to done, web element password is equal to, you're going to find out, and then web element login button is equal to. So now we have found this your elements now. So we are going to perform the operations on that elements. So how do we perform the operations on these elements? Let me make changes. So here I say Selenium 7880, but before this, the first operation that I'm going to do is I'm going to enter the invalid username and password, correct? So that is what I'll be doing it here. I say username dot send keys. This is how we use it multiple times, right? Send keys, I just say admin, correct? And then I say username dot send keys, what it is, password, for example say manager, right? And then I just say login button dot what, login button dot click, correct? I'll have to click. So again I'm going to capture your error message and I'm going to enter the username and password again, and I would be logging in, right? So this is what I've done. So let me run this code and see what it is going to do. Okay, so it is going to launch the browser and it is going to navigate through the URL, enter the username, enter the password, and then click on login button. Alright, so here I have an exception. Can you see this? It says org open QA stale element reference exception. The stale element reference is your element is not attached to the page document, which means your stale element reference means old element address. Your stale is old, element is your web element, reference is your address. So which means it is a old address and it is not able to identify your admin, your username field. Why? Because even if before performing some action or after you do something, if your page gets refreshed, right, then the address would get changed. So this is the major problem that we actually face in our real time. To overcome this, we are going to implement the encapsulation concept of your Java in your Selenium, so which would be through your POM class. Alright, so what does your POM class here do? It is going to identify that element at runtime and then it is going to perform operation on this. So now what am I supposed to do? All I am supposed to do is, so here let me use this, instead of this password I'll use this pwd, right? And then I can use this method. At the rate, I'm going to use this test. Here I would be using public void login. This is the method that I'm going to create. Now all I have to do is I have to make use of this methods n number of times. So what is the username that I'm going to pass? The username I'm going to pass is this. Okay, so this method, wait, this is not to be returned here. The methods which we are dealing with, only those elements are to be returned in this login page. So now we are going to create a new class, okay, which says only scripts. Okay, I just say script, or I'll say test scripts, or whichever you want. Now I'm going to write a test method here. How do I write? @test annotation, correct? So I use this public void log. So in order to initialize these elements, there's one important thing that we have to do in your login page. So we have to use a constructor of this particular page. Okay, so this constructor, what it does is, it has to be a public constructor, and this constructor would take the driver object, that is the control of this particular driver. Okay, what I'll be doing here is I'm going to use your PageFactory class. Okay, I'm going to use your PageFactory class dot init elements. Okay, this init element method would take two arguments. One is your driver object, that is the control of your web page, right? So that is your browser. So that is the one which it takes, and the second one it takes is which page should be initialized, which page element should be initialized. So for this, always we make use of this keyword. So this driver would be passed here. So I say WebDriver driver. Okay, so let me import this driver. So this is how you are going to initialize your elements on your web page. So one important thing that we'll have to understand is, in your Java or your Selenium, all the variables undergo three different stages. What are they? Declaration, initialization, and utilization. So that is what we are going to do here. So if you see this, this can be performed at the top, right? So we are going to do it here. So if you see this, these are nothing but what? These are nothing but the declaration, correct? So here we are going to initialize it. How do we initialize? We are going to make use of your PageFactory class. So this PageFactory class is from your POM concept, which is used to initialize this objects using its method. So this init element method is a static method of your PageFactory class. So this method will take two arguments. One is the browser address. The second one is the page address. The page address is always the current page. So we mark it as this. Why is this used for? This is always used to refer to the current instance. So that is the reason we are going to create a constructor. And what is a constructor? A constructor is a special member of a class which is used to initialize its instance variables. So what are the instance variables? The instance variables are these. So these are nothing but the web elements, and the web elements are handled here. Got it? This is all about your POM concept. So let us see how your encapsulation works in case of your POM classes. So let me now write a script. So here I'm going to take this public WebDriver driver is equal to null, correct? So let me import this. Okay, so now you're going to create an object of type what? An object of type login page, right? So this login page objects needs to be created in order to utilize all your login page. LP is equal to new login page. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this what? Driver. I'm going to pass this driver here, correct? And after this, so before this, of course, before this, I have to initialize your driver object. So let me copy this statements. So system.out set property and managing the timeouts, everything remains the same in your test method. So after this, I'm going to create an object of your login page, and then I will start utilizing your methods like your set username. I'm going to set the username here called admin. And then what it is? Set password. So I'm going to send the password Apple. Then I will click on this login button, right? So this is the first case. Now I can capture the error message because the error message would be displayed and I would be entering the right username and password. So let me copy this again and change the value, right? So here I say Selenium 7880. Here I'm going to pass Apple 12345 and then click on your login button. So this is how we are going to set your scripts in your framework. Okay, so this concept is known as your POM, wherein each and every web page is modeled as a class, and that class will have private web elements and public methods which will be used, the setters and the getter methods, which will be used in order to initialize those, in order to perform actions on those, and the constructor of that particular class which is going to initialize the web elements. So your test scripts will just have your test case. So this test case is what? This test case is just to log into the application. Am I right? So now let me run this and see what it is going to do. So it has detected testng. Now it is going to log in, launch the browser, navigate through the URL, and it is going to work as per our instructions, right? So it says admin. No, it did not work. It has captured, entered, and perfectly logged into your application, right? So this is how, can you see this? One test case has passed, right? So you have got the reports as well. So this is the exact replica of how you're going to design your framework in the next class as well. So this is about your POM. Okay, let us go back to our slides, see what we have done till now. So when you are working with your page object model, it is a design pattern in your Selenium test automation. It is actually a Java design pattern which was used by your developers, but we also use it since we are also automation developers. So we use it in our framework development as well, right? It is used for enhancing your test maintenance and reducing your code duplication. So these are the three different frameworks which you come across, and all these three different frameworks can implement your POM as well. Okay, but what is a page object? A page object is an object oriented class that serves as a interface. Okay, so do not go with exact definitions of it. So all you have to know is what is a page object? The object which is present on a page, which is nothing but your web elements, right? So the tests use these methods of this page object whenever they need in order to interact with the page, right? So that is how we are going to design your POM. All right, so what are the advantages of going through the POM concept? One is your code reusability, one is the code maintainability, and your object repository and readability, right? We saw how to use it, right? So we can maintain the code. How? If something changes in your login page later, so all you have to do is go to that login page and then work with that, just make a changes on that particular page. So that is how we are going to work. So we have implemented your page object model. So one is using your page object model without your PageFactory, which we saw, like using your encapsulation, and with your PageFactory is even more simple, right? So that is how we have modeled. So can you see here, all we have done, we have identified it and we have used it, and now we are going to work with your PageFactory and we have used it. So this is how your PageFactory would help you to identify the elements, initialize it, and then work. All right, so to summarize, we have seen the need for your POM. So why is POM used? POM is used in order to overcome your stale element reference exception, and also for reusing your code, and also for maintaining your code, right? And we also saw your page object modeling implementation and the concept of your PageFactory. So this is for your today's class, and you can practice, and if you get any questions, you can just drop us an email or contact our support team. We are always here to help you. Okay, so I hope you guys would practice and come back to the next class so that we can start with our framework. Okay, so like I always do, here is my request. Your feedback is very important for us. Be it your suggestions, your comments, your likes, your ideas, we are open for it. Please do take your feedback after your sessions are done, and it would help us a lot. All right, thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye bye.